right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to episode, what is this, 7 or 8 of the Confidently Wrong podcast. We are glad today to have a new introduction to the squad. So welcome, Savon Jones.
Wow, Savon.
Yeah, there we go. All right. So we actually have a lot to talk about today. So we'll briefly hit on the PS5 news from the week. Couple movie trailers that are kind of old, so the Batman and then Justice League, and then I think we're going to start diving into everybody's new favorite Netflix show, Avatar: The Legend of Korra.
Sounds like a plan.
All right.
Yeah. Wait. So can I talk about how I got a brand new fucking TV this week?
All right, so we do...
For 4 seconds.
All right, so Wesley got an OLED TV. The
OLED in the house.
The LG CX.
OLED.
So what are your thoughts, Wesley? How are you liking this?
Okay, so just real briefly. First of all, I'm very bad at making decisions. So I went back and forth 80,000 times on which TV would be good? What's our right price point? What's the quality I want? What's the size that I want? So anyways, a lot of wasted time. And finally Jen was like, I think you're spending too much time on this TV. Even if it's $500 more, just get the more expensive one. At this point, just, I don't care. And I was like, great. So
this is your wife who's a doctor saying this. That's also just...
yeah.
Qualify that.
And she was like, we'll find the money elsewhere in our budget. Just do it. Stop spending time.
The doctor's saying this to you, the teacher.
Yeah. We'll find that money in a jacket pocket in my lab coat.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not like our finances are super great. I mean, they're definitely fine, but they're not super great just because she has $1 gazillion in loans. So
True.
We pay thousands of dollars in loans every month just on her student loans.
Sure.
So big takeaways on the OLED. I can't tell because I don't put them side by side, but I'm just telling myself now after a week of using it, I'm like, this picture is so good. It's we moved up from 1080 whatever P or I to because it's a 12-year-old TV to 4K. So obviously the quality's got to be better. I don't know if I can tell the difference if you put them side by side, but I'm just telling myself that I can.
Dude, and my phone looks better than your 12-year-old TV.
You probably have
not a good comparison.
And it's the colors must be richer because it's OLED, right?
And that true black, Wesley. And
the true black. Every review says inky blacks. I mean, I swear to God, they get paid to say inky black in all these reviews.
Does it spray the ink at you?
That sounds like a porn
very
star.
Black. It is so dark. The dark parts.
It's like a loading screen. Just look like you turn the TV off.
Dude, true. Honestly,
it does. It does look like you haven't turned the TV on, and you have. Which is right? Because the LEDs actually aren't on. They just turn them off when you get down to black. But so the one downside maybe is that at those dark scenes, sometimes it's a little bit hard to see what's going on. Yeah. So I was watching Greyhound this morning on Apple TV Plus, the Tom Hanks movie, which don't watch it, it's not good. But there's a lot of scenes inside the ship that are dark, and it's hard to actually see besides his face, you can't really see what's around him.
Yeah.
And then so I had to close the blinds to actually see it. And then in Apex when I'm playing, anytime I'm inside a building, I can't see the people running around. So I actually turned the brightness up by 20 out of 100 scale or something because I just can't play because there's nobody to shoot at. So
I think
those are the downsides. Everything else seems to be an upside. I love it. It's great.
I think the thing with those TVs is you do need to actually calibrate them quite a bit. I think one of the selling points for that specific one, because I want that one, is that you don't need to do too much calibration for it. But one of the downsides they mentioned in the ratings review was specifically gaming. And my main game right now is Warzone, which the color palette is all dark colors. So I was like, all right, well, now I'll have something else to blame why I suck.
I'm telling myself that I'm playing better than ever because now it's in upscaled 4K. So
you gotta find you one of them real colorful, whimsical games. Cause
yeah,
I feel like playing COD on a fancy TV. Okay, well,
yeah,
you can play Super Mario Sunshine.
Yeah, I'll play Galaxy.
4 times more pixels, So obviously I'm seeing the enemies better, Oh, and it's bigger, right? I went from 40 to 55. Also, 65 would have been a mistake. I would be throwing up all over the place.
So what you guys are saying, this TV not great for military
FPS.
combatants, but fantastic for Goombas.
Yes.
That's a
So
good
if that's
takeaway.
not a stellar
Great,
review
great.
for this TV.
I like it. Inky Blacks makes more sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Or Toad the Mushroom Guy. He would be amazing. Yoshi and Toad, like Mario Kart, would be like
Oh,
fucking unreal on this TV.
Or
Have you
Monster
been
Hunter.
watching the basketball on it?
Yes.
And what is that like?
It's good.
Okay.
It's very good. Yesterday I had to adjust it just a little bit because I was a little bit too like orangey.
Yeah.
Like Charles Barkley was starting to look a little orangey, but otherwise it's been solid.
All right. Well,
It's been solid. Let's
we'd
move on.
love
But
to hear.
yeah, it's I recommend the OLED if you can afford it. I was considering the TCL 6 series, TCL 8 series, and Samsung Q80T as like alternatives.
All right, well, moving on. So speaking of gaming, so this Wednesday was the last major PS5 event before the console will actually release.
It was like a part A and part B in terms of events, right?
Well, they
had
did the
announcement,
trade,
and then
yeah.
they had the pre-order fuck up.
Yeah, well, we'll get
Part
to that.
two.
So the first part of the game, of the showcase, was they did some trailers and some gameplay. So they opened with Miles Morales, which I think looks fucking awesome. I'm definitely going to day one that. They did a few new things. The major new reveal was this Harry Potter game, which and I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, I'm also thinking I'm going to day one that because that just looks super fucking cool, especially going to the 1800s. So I don't know if y'all have any thoughts on that game or either the Miles Morales gameplay, but I was honestly very impressed with everything I saw gameplay-wise.
I'm interested in the Harry Potter game. Like, I liked Harry Potter as a kid. I never really watched the movies. I read all the books, but like, this is one of those things where the IP is a good concept to work with, and that'll draw people in. But what's the actual execution going to look like? And if you do it right, you're going to win a lot of people over. But the flip side is you have one of those games that just slaps the Harry Potter label on it, and then it's something that's mediocre. But like I thought this new Spider-Man was a good example, right? Like, I'm not even a big Spider-Man fan, but they just execute, like, as a character, but they just executed the production in the game so well that even if you're not a Spider-Man fan, you're going to enjoy the game. So my hope is that this Harry Potter game does the same. There's monsters, there's lore. The books really fleshed out this big world that exists. Like, all right, cool, y'all got something to work with. Like, let's see what it looks like in practical execution.
And I think, like, to kind of hammer home your point, the Avengers is kind of a perfect example of that, right? Like, are any of you remotely interested in that Avengers game? And this
I'm
is
remotely interested, but I'm not going to buy it.
I'll get it for like $5 like in 2 years. But like
Exactly.
this is like literally a podcast like about just nerdy shit, and like that hasn't even breached like anything we're remotely going to talk about because it's like the best IP in the world, and they just completely made a milquetoast version of the game. So.
Yeah, most
it
most
doesn't tie
blockbuster
in, though.
movies.
Why are they still alive, right? Like,
No,
Those
it's a new. It's
should
not
be
the
the same.
movie though. It's like and this Spider-Man in the game is supposed to connect to this Avengers game, but it just no one gives a shit about it. It just looks mediocre. It looks like the mayonnaise of video games. And no one
But that has been true throughout the entire history of video games, right? Like any major IP translated into a video game from like the NES onward, usually not great, right? There's only like probably five amazing games like that, you know, like some of the recent Batmans, the latest Spider-Man, and that's it.
Well, I feel like those were made
Yeah.
independently
Has
of
there
the
ever been a good
movies,
Superman
though,
game?
which is like the biggest difference, right? Like,
Yeah.
the Spider-Man game didn't try and be the movies; it was its own thing. I feel like the Marvel game kind of half-assed it. Of like, all right, well, it's its own story and continuity, but we're also going to use the likeness of Mark Ruffalo for Hulk. I'm like, you got to make up your mind because now I'm having trouble. Like, is it based on the MCU or is it its own thing? But that makes it harder to establish its own identity, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And like the creatives behind these games, once they're unattached from those kind of requirements from the movie studios, then they can go all out and they get really creative. But that was one thing about the new Spider-Man trailer with Miles Morales. I was like, oh man, he doesn't look like Into the Spider-Verse Miles Morales. I was a little thrown off by that. I kind of would love to see a Spider-Verse Into the Spider-Verse adaptation into a game, just because that art style is incredible.
That'd be cool. That would be cool. They're definitely gonna do a suit. I would be very shocked if they don't have the Spider-Verse suit in the game. But I think you're right.
But you'd have to get like the writers.
Well, that's
and,
what they
like,
did.
The art directors from
Yeah.
Into the Spider-Verse
Yeah.
to then like now work on this, and they're probably working on like the sequel, right?
Yeah, they are.
Mhm.
And especially like
Splitting
the
the team.
animation in that movie is so completely unique and like so ambitious in the amount of stuff that goes into an individual shot. Like, seems like that's something that PS5 would be able to do with just like everything we're seeing about how hardware can like actually impact what they're able to do visually and functionally in games. But yeah, I can't see that.
Visually, I really get a kick out of Fisk. His head's like in his chest. It's like a hunchback. It's great. I love it.
All right. Any other thoughts about gameplay or game trailers before we move on to how Sony has fucked the consumer?
I think I was just disappointed that there wasn't anything new. It was like the same trailers they used in June or whatever that last event was. And it was just like, why is this 45 minutes of the same trailers you've already seen? Like, nothing new happened here. Thanks, guys.
I got to tell you
Appreciate wasting our
guys,
time.
I am not sold on the PS5. Or rather, I'm not sold in the way that you guys are. I've owned every PlayStation, and I'll definitely get a PS5 eventually, but I'm not like, trying to order it at midnight like you guys did. So I'd love for you to explain to me why. And like part of my reasoning is like, well, I looked at the games and like, yeah, they're cool and stuff, but I'm not dying to play one of those immediately.
Yeah, I mean, Wesley, I think you have a better understanding because we actually did an episode on this, Brian. Before
I totally missed it,
Brian.
No, was that in the prep document?
Doesn't read his briefings. He doesn't listen to the old episodes. It's like I'm really beginning to question your commitment.
Such a diva. He just shows up and is like, guys, it better be working.
But yeah, Wesley, give us like the 1 minute
Okay.
of why
Yeah.
the hardware is going to actually be able to impact gaming in a
Yeah,
pretty
I think
unique
based
way.
on what we talked about last time or in that episode, it was really about like both new generation consoles, Xbox Series X and PS5 are going to have like way faster hard disks than they have now, and so you're going to like developers are going to be able to make games either richer because now they're going to be able to load in like much higher resolution stuff, right? And then I think they call them like assets, like in the, I don't know, Anna could tell us, but they also are going to be able to like not limit how they build the worlds anymore. So I mean, maybe this is something that will take them getting used to at first, but like they were talking about how like you often see worlds or maps built in like kind of this maze structure and you're like choked off in like either long hallways or an elevator ride or like the subway ride. But because they're going to be able to load the level as you play it, like you won't have those things. So like you could much more like fluidly flow between different areas and the story doesn't have to stop and start. And so you don't have to feel like you're coming out of it and then jumping back in. And maybe gamers are used to those breaks now, but like, there's some developers out there, I'm sure, that are going to make advantage of that and be like, we're going to make this story actually like feel flowy and feel more like, a movie instead of
like No
these,
Man's
stop and
Sky.
start chapters. I'm not familiar with that, but yeah, maybe.
It's kind of like, and I think Ratchet and Clank is supposed to be the first big example of this because the whole point of the game is like teleporting between worlds, and because of the solid state drive on the PS5, you're able to go in between worlds without it loading. So the examples in like Last of Us 2, like they load a new area by having you like try and open that door and mash triangle. God of War did it too with like crawling in between, like the God of War did it as well. I mean, like crawling in between the certain areas, that's just a sneaky way of them loading in the new areas. By being able to cut that out, it seems like they're actually going to be able to create, like on the creative end, not just the technical end, it's going to really open up what they can do.
The older
I think
God of
the
War did that
second
too.
reason? Yeah.
They had very,
games have been doing this forever, right?
Yeah,
Like,
organically built-in loading screens, long, like you say, elevator rides, long bridges, dialogue, like
yeah.
as ways to forced walking
in
dialogue.
the original NES Mario or the NES Mario, you had to like stop after every like
it was like 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, exactly.
And that was them loading in different things, chapters. And then I think the other thing that I'm really excited about is the graphics should be much better. Like, not only are they going to have like better graphics card, obviously, but the system itself should be able to pump out 4K
120
images. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to game at 120. That doesn't seem like it's for sure. I think they've like said like it's possible.
Yeah.
But even if you're doing 4K 60 or 4K 30, right, like you're just getting more picture for your buck, and so I'm excited about that. That's partly why I wanted to get a new TV to match up with that. You know, and then there's going to be more 4K content that's available that the PS5 will be able to push to your TV, right? So even if it's not games, you're going to be able to watch movies, you're going to be able to stream whatever, right? Like all of that stuff's going to come through that PS5 much better. So I'm excited about all of those things.
So then I guess like the next thing, and this is a good segue actually, is one. So there were a few things I think people are kind of upset with Sony about this week. The first being this pre-order debacle. We'll get to that in a second. But I think the second, and this is a bit more nuanced, and I think you were a little bit spicy about this, Wesley, in the other direction, was that they announced this week that two major games that I think were initially sold as PS5 exclusives, the Horizon sequel, Horizon Forbidden West, and this Miles Morales game, are actually also going to come out on PS4.
And we talked about this. All of us are really excited for both of those games.
Obviously, yeah.
Bonnie, Savon, are you also into those?
What, the new Spider-Man game?
And
Spider-Man
and the Horizon Zero Dawn sequel.
I had never played the first Horizon.
Okay.
And that wasn't because I didn't think it was good. It's just like, I think Alan mentioned this once. Like I've just played a lot of third-person action games. Like, and I only have an appetite for so many, like between Witcher, God of War. But like, I've heard nothing but good things about it. So I would probably like watch a YouTube video and play the sequel. I am excited for Spider-Man Miles Morales. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed Spider-Man as a not Spider-Man fan. So I'm very excited for the next game.
I don't know how anyone could not be a Spider-Man fan, but we don't need to get into that right now.
He's just not my favorite character. I don't dislike him, but I'm very neutral on him.
But anyway, so I think the concern is that not only does it seem a bit misleading to initially say these games are going to be like, you know, first-party PS5 exclusives, but now people are concerned that, okay, if this game is coming out on PS4, is that really going to enable them to take full advantage of the PS5? And everything we were just talking about is like, because of the new hardware, like you can do so many things. But if the game's also coming out on PS4, that's kind of concerning of like, okay, well, is it actually going to take over the PS5? So Wes, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you sent us an article or a think piece that somebody wrote that was like, I think we're losing trust in Sony based on what it says or whatever. Like, can we really trust that Sony's going to do what it says it's going to do? And like the sense of entitlement that people who are really upset about this, like, just amazes me, right? Like, you having a PS5 and getting the PS5 version of the game is great, right? Like, you're going to enjoy your game. Somebody else having the PS4 and getting the PS4 version of the game impacts you in 0% of a way.
Well, the argument
right?
is it's a lesser product.
Yeah, but like, so? Like, I mean, like, we trust that, like, whoever I don't know who the studio is that did Horizon Zero Dawn, like, they're gonna put out a good game. Yeah. So, like, I mean, I think we trust them. Like, obviously, the gameplay is what matters the most, right? And if they're gonna put out a good game like they did last time, or just like Naughty Dog put out a great The Last of Us 2 game, and we're assuming that Insomniac does Spider-Man, like, we're assuming they're gonna do a good game. Like, they've already done these things in the aspect of PS4, right? Like, you're not gonna miss these extra features in the game, given that it's so early in the life cycle of the console. And like, it's sort of unrealistic to be like, hey, on day one or in even like year one, that all the developers are gonna like be able to maximize the potential and come up with all these ideas when they haven't even seen the console in real life. So like, if they're putting out a great game, awesome. Thank you to those developers for doing that. And thank you to Sony for pushing everybody moving forward. But like, these things happen like in steps, right? And I don't think anybody got mad that Ghost was available, like Call of Duty Ghost was available on PS4 and PS5, or PS3 and PS4, sorry, you know, on that transition. Like, there's gonna be a period of transition. Like, yeah. I don't understand the outrage that some people have about this. Like, if you and like, as we saw, like with the pre-order debacle, not everybody's gonna have a PS5 at launch. So like, you know, are you going to say like, well, the people who didn't get a PS5 don't get to play this like amazing game? Like, nah, fuck you. Like, go and get your PS5, be happy about your game, and like move about your day. Like, I don't understand what your problem is.
Before we get to the pre-order debacle, like, you know me, I get my energy off of people on the internet getting mad about stuff. And I saw this, so apparently, like,
trolls.
Of course, Guerrilla like had to put out a statement, and they were like, "Oh no, don't worry, like, Forbidden West is going to be like built from the ground up." And like there were comments on Reddit was like, well then I'm gonna need a video proving how you're doing that. So I really want to see how you're scaling it back for PS4 just so I can be sure that you're building it back for the PS5. So it's like, and it's funny because I think a lot of the changes outside of things like, you know, level loading and stuff like that, a lot of the stuff you're not going to be able to notice. Like you're not going to be able to really clearly see some of the graphical improvements and stuff like that. So I do wonder if like people just like get mad about it without really understanding like the actual technical implications of these things. And I think that a lot of developers are at this point just kind of have to ignore that shit and try and placate people at the same time. So
I mean, you could make a fucking game like what is that game that's real popular now? You got to like race through the little fucking rainbow colored world.
Fall Guys.
Oh, Fallout Guys.
Yeah. There's no like graphic, like crazy intensive thing there, right? Like people are playing the game because it's fun. So make a fun fucking game, which they're doing. And then like, what else are you complaining about? Like, oh, the developers made a fun game, but like, oh, somebody else got to play this fun game, so now I'm mad. Like, nah, fuck you, bro. Like somebody else's like happiness is not tied to yours, right? Like
Wes,
just be happy.
You make an interesting point because like this is how I think about it, right? Like all the technical advancements that you outlined, they sound like great and all of that, but it doesn't encourage me to go out and get that PS5 immediately. And that's kind of, you know, have we reached a point in video gaming where there's such like a wide array of product out there, like all good games, like stuff like what you just mentioned, like Fallout Guys, which has shitty graphics. Like I played stuff on the Switch, I played stuff on my phone, all fantastic, phenomenal games that don't require the hardware that the PS5 needs. Like have we just reached a saturation point? Like we, you know, like some of these advancements are like almost too incremental to really, you know, merit like the, you know, those console exclusives that we grew up being used to. Maybe we're hitting like a new point in video gaming.
Brian, I mean, I feel you. I do think with the graphics there is like a diminishing returns at a certain point where, like Wesley, you were kind of mentioning it with your TV, right? Like you were kind of hinting at it that at a certain point when your stuff starts getting so nice, it's just, you know, you're diminishing returns. It's not going to look as good even though it's technically better. But, and I think anyone who's played, like to your point, I've had every PlayStation and they always do a game on like the fading out console and then the new one. Anyone who's gotten a new console knows that the new games are mostly tech demos, like for the most part early on. That's not a knock on them, but to Mike's point, they don't have a chance to maximize what the console can do yet. So all it is a tech demo, and then down the line is when you really get to see the fleshed out gameplay and whatnot. But I feel like nowadays, like a lot of people aren't going to be won over on graphics as much, and it is going to come down to like dynamic gameplay. The question is, can you leverage the PlayStation 5's potential to make better gameplay, or are you only making a prettier game? Because, you know, for some of my games now, like I don't care about the graphics at this point. I need the controls to work. I need the online to be good. I need it to be a game that works. Slightly better loading doesn't really make a difference to me. It might to somebody else, though, depending on what kind of game you're playing. But like, Sony is definitely going to have to, or maybe not Sony, but the developers are definitely going to, I mean, I'm getting a PS5, but like, it's the ball's in their court on using, balls in their court on using all this new technological ceiling to actually make better gameplay, not just better visuals.
I'd say I've been dabbling in 2K20 because it was on sale a couple months ago, and like the load times in that one are ridiculous. Ugh. And like, if I think one, right, like part of that is because they probably are trying to push the PS4's like graphics and RAM to like the max, right? And I'm on PS4, I'm not on PS4 Pro like Mike. You know, I don't have that nice PS4 Pro goodness.
It'll make a difference.
Bite your fucking tongue.
I like my PS4 amateur.
My PS4 launch.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna claim. Like I wasn't on the ground floor, but right, like as the games have gone on, the load times might go up, right? Because they're trying to pack more into it. But as a player, like it's frustrating, man, when it's taking, you know, a minute to load one game. You got to watch the stupid NBA 2K preview show. God damn it, I wish they would stop that. Like those hosts are so annoying. But like Yeah, I mean,
Dollar
right?
dollar
Like,
bills.
if that was cut right to like 5 seconds to load the game, man, you could get so many more games in and grinding, you know, your overall
Badges
or
and
whatever my player.
VC and all that.
Yeah, all of that would be just faster. You get to like play the actual game instead of watching the stupid loading screen all the time.
I don't
So,
know if
I
y'all
think
played
that's where that-
Ghost of Tsushima, but that game has almost
No.
no load time. It's crazy.
Oh,
Like
that's awesome.
fast traveling is maybe 3 seconds, and it really does impact
3 seconds or 30?
3. It's crazy.
3. Wow.
But here's the thing: the game's kind of boring, and this is a hot take, and we don't need to get into it. But it's kind of just like go, and it's really beautiful, and like the way they're able to like animate the world is like really peeking out the PS4. Like there's leaves falling everywhere. Like it looks like a Kurosawa movie. But it's at the core of it, it's just go here and kill people, go here and kill people, go here and kill people, and it's like I just kind of like burned out on that. So it's a really great example of how like you can maximize the hardware, but if you're actually not really like building a holistic product that is really pushing things, and it's just kind of like, well, what are we doing?
Well, you've played both. How is that different than like the original, or not the original, like the Spider-Man from a couple years ago? Like that is also go here, wrap up some people, punch them in the face, and then you go to the next thing. Like how is that
Yeah,
different?
well, I mean, I think a traversal in Spider-Man is a huge thing, and I think because that is unique, that it adds a whole nother level to the game. So I think like web slinging is dope like that. It also just has a really great story, and I think the Ghost of Tsushima story falls flat a bit. But we don't need to get into that game. But what I do want to
Pre-orders?
Yeah, exactly. So, Brian, you saying, oh, you're not going to get it on day one, it's fine because you're not going to fucking be able to. Because what happened was Sony, and this is the other thing that has upset my internet friends, is they said they were not going to give like 0 notice for pre-orders, but almost immediately after this event, pre-orders went live on major retailers, Best Buy, Walmart, what have you. And they were gone within seconds. And I had signed up for the emails to get it, but we were celebrating Anna's new job, so I had quite a few drinks and missed that email. So now there's just no way to get a pre-order now, and of course the scalping is a thing again. There's not really anything to talk about, but I think like that is also kind of like the eroding trust thing. But I also don't know if that's necessarily Sony's fault. I think that is more like a knock on retailers. So I don't know if y'all have any thoughts on that, but I didn't get a pre-order. I know one person who got a pre-order, and that's it.
Hey, one of our fans, Matt, got a pre-order for the digital edition
Oh, yeah?
Nice.
on Target. Yeah.
All right, well, if Sony wants to sponsor us down the line, we'll take 4 PlayStation 5s.
Then I'll play it on day one.
Well,
Yeah, well,
retailers historically have like not necessarily complied with what like the people selling the product wanted to do. Like there've been plenty of times where games got leaked early from GameStop or Walmart or whatever before the release date. So like, like some of it could be the retailers, but some of it also like that sounds like something that was like, oh, if they just went the opposite direction. That just sounds like a Sony bigwig was like, yeah, this is what we're gonna do, and everyone just kind of had to take the L on it. But you're gonna get it when you get it. Like some of that stuff, like come on, dog. Like people will not remember when PS3 came out. You know how hard it was to get a PS3 and an Xbox 360 when them joints first came out. Like, or when the Wii came out. Like this isn't.
Oh,
the
this
Switch.
isn't-
Wii was
The
impossible.
Switch.
Yeah.
Then
Good
the
God.
Switch recently.
Yeah. So this isn't a new phenomenon. People using bots and hype beasts scalping people isn't a new phenomenon. And the pandemic, that's a new phenomenon. But more people than ever trying to like post up. Like there's a lot of people who were not going to get a PS5 who were like, well, shit, I ain't got nothing else to do. Let me get this PS5.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah.
this is a combo of new stuff where it's expected that there'd be a shortage. And if you look at just past how console releases have gone, this ain't really new.
No. And you know what I forgot about the PS3, and this isn't really connected to that. So it was my bar mitzvah present. It was the only bar mitzvah present I got. My parents did not let me get all the money, so that's kind of fucked. That bitch cost $600 for 60 gigabytes.
Did it really?
It cost $600 for that fucking like battleship looking one.
Yeah,
that was
I had
like
that one.
thick as
That
a
was my
brick,
shit.
dude. Craziness. But yeah, I mean, we don't need to talk about the price points, but I guess it's worth mentioning that they're doing the digital edition, which will be, I think, $400, and then the disc edition, which the only
$399, Mike.
Oh, excuse me, $399. I am the Jew here, so I should be particular around this. Yeah, there goes our sponsorship for this episode. Every episode, somehow we find a new way to lose potential sponsors.
Manischewitz wine. No longer sponsoring us.
Look it up. Lishana Tova, bitches. And then, so the only difference is the disc. You have the ability to add that disc drive for $100 extra. The console is exactly the same. I'm going to get the disc drive. I know, Savon, you are. The main reason being that, A, games are getting more expensive. A lot of games are going to be $70 when they release. So kind of that having the ability to maybe trade a game in or give it to a friend is really going to probably get you your money's worth for that extra $100 down the line.
Yeah, I always I always get my single players on disc just because I can always give them to friends who I want them to play it, but I don't expect them to buy it. I don't expect my homeboy to buy God of War, but if I gave him the disc for free, be like, yo, man, if you got some time, check this out, and then vice versa. So,
dude, I did that, but then my bum ass friends began to fucking expect it. And then it was like, I would buy the game. And I'm just like, what am I going to buy it for? I could just wait 3 weeks and then fucking do it. And my hype beast self, like, just day one's fucking games.
It's specifically for games that you. Well, yeah, I guess you just need better friends.
What game did I give you, Wesley? I don't even remember.
You let me borrow God of War.
And
I kind of stopped playing it.
You didn't even finish?
I think I gave it like 10 hours or something.
Oh
no, I didn't finish. He was still hanging around with the little son and like trying to teach him things, and I was bored of it.
Yeah, you mean the game hanging around the sun? That's literally the game.
Okay, well.
Like, what are you doing? Oh, yeah, playing as the god whenever that part's over.
Yeah, it was annoying. But then Mike was like, yeah, you need to give that game back.
Yeah, because you were moving.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
You were leaving the state.
I was like, I'm not playing this anyways. Here's your game back.
All right, well, we'll get out of here. So next, a few kind of things in superhero land. The first being...
Oh, wait. Can I say one thing about the PS4 or PS5 launch?
Yeah.
It's just small. Is that like, I don't know why, but this whole summer I'd been thinking like, I'm going to get a PS5 when it comes out and da-da-da. And it like really didn't like cross my mind. I knew it'd be like, people would want it, but I didn't think it'd be like limited. And I think my expectations was like, Apple phones, they're hard to get, but like you can get one within like a month when they drop, right? Like if you want one at the beginning. But now I'm like, shit, man, like I may not have a PS5 for like another 6 months. And that was just like something that like,
I doubt
thought
it would be
about.
that long. I'd be surprised if it was that long.
Yeah, well, like they're not taking orders, right? So like, I mean, maybe if they once it launches, maybe they'll take online backup orders or whatever back orders. But if they don't, if they're like, no, you have to find it in a store, like that shit could go on for a long time before you really lock in and like find one.
Ugh, calling fucking every GameStop.
It's gonna be like hand sanitizer.
I'm not gonna do that. So,
dude, the funniest
might be a while.
The last thing we'll say, and then we're getting out of here because we've been in this for like 25 minutes. I saw this funny tweet. It was like they're essentially calling like GameStop a cuck for selling like the digital edition. Like they were marketing it. It's like, please buy this console. It's gonna put us out of business.
That last hoorah.
All right, well, we'll get out of here. So, couple things in superhero land, and we're not going to talk about the Mando trailer. Savon doesn't really watch trailers. I don't know if you watch either of these trailers, but we'll talk about it. And I'm typically a Marvel guy, but I think there's actually a few cool things coming out of DC.
I don't watch trailers for things I like.
Fair enough. All right, fair enough. The first one is being the Batman. So this is Batfleck that kind of fell on its face. That's over with. The whole DC extended universe seems to have kind of fallen apart. So they're doing a new Batman. This one is with Robert Pattinson of Twilight fame. It's set during like Batman's second year of crime fighting, and it's more like a dark. I've heard it described as almost like punk, and it's kind of more of the detective thing. If you watch the trailer, Batman looks emo as fuck. It's really cool. I don't know if y'all watched the trailer, if y'all have any thoughts. I'm pretty excited for it. I think it looks pretty cool.
I mean, it kind of looked like something of a continuation of Christopher Nolan's Batman series in a way, like in its grittiness and like kind of nihilistic. But it also kind of had its own vibe, right? Because who's playing the commissioner? Somebody interesting was playing the commissioner. I forget, but like, yeah, just like the whole thing with the Riddler. I don't know. Is that a spoiler? I think it's it's pretty much the Riddler, and like having kind of like that Heath Ledger Joker-esque kind of vibe. I don't know. I like it. I love those Batman movies. So, something in that vein, I'm definitely open to.
I think the one thing in the trailer that stood out as different from the Nolans, because I think it's obviously more aligned with what Christopher Nolan was doing rather than any of the newer Batfleck ones, is like that shot at the end where he's just like beating the shit out of the one dude, and then not only does he like do the typical like Batman like kung fu shit, but then when the dude's on the ground, he's just like really viciously punching him, and I think like that kind of, I think they probably put that in the trailer to kind of like set the tone that this Batman might be a bit more unhinged than Christopher Nolan's was, so that really stood out to me. So I don't know, I think this looks really. And then Commissioner Gordon is Jeffrey Wright from Westworld.
Yeah.
Zoe Kravitz is Catwoman. Andy Serkis is Alfred. And then Colin Farrell is the Penguin as well. So I think these were kind of like a bit too cartoony villains to put in the Christopher Nolan one. So I'm kind of excited to see what they do with
that. Jim Carrey, the GOAT Riddler.
I always have mixed feelings about Batman as a character because there's so many like interpretations of him that they might as well be different superheroes. Like there's the cheesy, campy Adam West version. There's the, there's the 90s George Clooney-ish one. There's the DC one where he's like the classic kind of gritty Batman. But like, I'm curious. I like the idea of them focusing on the detective aspect of things, mainly because I feel like in our modern like culture, I feel like Batman is actually starting to age poorly as a character. Like in terms of being a billionaire who just beats the shit out of poor people. Like I think that's starting to like, I'm serious. Like I think people are starting to look at that and say, I don't know. But
I love those memes where it's like you're just trying to like buy an eighth of weed and Batman comes out and breaks your arm.
but like it's a joke. But then you're thinking, I'm like, yo, man, that's like hockey, some shit Batman would do. Like Batman would really beat the brakes off you. Like yo, B, I'm just trying to get like this money because this dude said wash this warehouse. Little man, I'm just trying to go home. but jokes aside, like I think if they lean into the detective part, which is something that's underexplored with him in terms of his, essentially omniscient skill set. And if they lean into him really being gritty and like actually traumatized and like that actually really leads to him doing straight up not good behavior, but it makes him more of an anti-hero, I think that'd be a really interesting take on the character. Like that makes me excited for a character who I'm generally kind of like lukewarm about.
Yeah, I hope the creatives of this movie aren't like isolated in a bubble and not paying attention to what's going on in the world. And kind of try to address some of those things that you were talking about. But hands down, I think my favorite take on Batman is the one from the animated series. Mm-hmm. And that is definitely a detective-focused Batman. Mm-hmm. Like he's using his wits to solve crimes. And
but he's old in that show, right?
The whole Catmas conspiracy.
No, from Batman Beyond, he's young, but in the animated series, he's kind of like a grown man, right?
Oh, he's grown, yeah.
Yeah, but like his skill set,
he's not
like,
old.
Yeah, but it's like he doesn't just beat people up. He does like when he'll try and do a non-violent method of doing things. He's a very balanced take on the character.
Yeah, and he's more of a lurker in the shadows, right? He's not this ball buster.
Guys, is Batman a cop? Is that what we just kind of like walked into?
He's a vigilante, and I'm not sure if he's the kind that I'm okay with.
Oh, God. He's like a right-wing vigilante.
Like what brand? What brand? Like he's a vigilante. Like, all right, cool. What brand of vigilante are you? Because I don't need you in my neighborhood beating people ass. I don't need Batman pushing me up against the wall. Where's One-Eye Joe? Bitch, I don't know. I was just trying to get some hot fries.
You're hiding Jonah Hex. Oh, shit.
All right.
Have you guys watched The Boys?
No, I've watched season 1. Maybe we should talk about that next because that I think is a really awesome take on superheroes, and I need to watch. And
I think
2.
that's the take on superheroes that these new movies need to grapple with. I think
are they cops?
But like
if you watch The Boys, you'll see what he means.
Right? Like Watchmen's already tried that.
All right, we'll preview for episode 8. We'll do The Boys season 2.
Yeah, Wesley. By the way, I agree. I think this like some of these newer shows might be better in like the modern context. I think it's Watchmen is an amazing take for like its time period, which I love.
When was that? Early 90s, late 80s, something like that.
80s.
Well, yeah, but also the set piece of the story too. Like when it came out in like the 90s, 80s, with the story pieces in the 60s, or not the 60s, Cold War, but like I'm curious to see that in like what a modern like interpretation of that type of non-traditional superhero story looks like.
And I think
I
Watchmen
did
won
try
some
to watch The
Emmys,
Boys.
didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This Watchmen, the HBO
Yeah,
one.
which is a
I think so,
phenomenal show.
I've been working my way through it. It's heavy though. I mean, I think that was my problem with The Boys. I watched like the first 2 episodes, but like in the first episode, I don't think this is a spoiler because it's the first episode. Like, you know, the one guy like basically like forces the the new superhero to like oral pleasure him.
Oh yeah, the
you know,
the
like as
sexual
a way to
harassment.
like get in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, like I was like, yeah, I get it, but like it was just like a lot to like take in on like episode 1, and like obviously that's the point. But it didn't make me want to like keep watching. I was like, this is just gonna be depressing, and there's like enough depressing things going on like in the past couple of years. Like I don't know, I just didn't stick with it. But like if you want to talk about it, we definitely can, like we'll definitely watch it.
When we get armies of fans, Wesley will be known as the sensitive one.
Nah, he ain't wrong. Like, there's a bunch of stuff I don't watch. I'm like, yo, this is too heavy. The Boys, it gets heavy, but I think the nonsense and like the campiness and humor kind of brings me in. But
Yeah.
I can completely understand like some of the stuff just being like, all right, I'm not about to watch this shit.
Like I read about this in the news already.
Yeah, I'm just like
Lauer situation, right? Like we don't need all that.
Yeah, I'm just like, this isn't entertainment to me right now.
Yeah, like this is real. This is what happens to people, and I mean that's the point, right? Obviously.
All right, well, we'll get out of here. So before we
All right.
get to Korra,
Okay.
we could skip Justice League if y'all want. We spent a lot of time.
Just like Zack Snyder.
Yeah, so I guess the main thing is that this Justice League Snyder cut. So Zack Snyder left the post-production of the Justice League movie, and it turned into just a completely different beast, and a beast that was not well received. So
I didn't know that you just said in your brief that it was because his child had died.
Yeah, his daughter
and
died.
I didn't know that that's why he had left.
Yeah.
I kind of thought, you know, it was just like creative differences, but that was something new that you shared.
So Joss
Oh,
Whedon,
shit.
obviously of Avengers fame, oversaw some reshoots and some other changes that is, I guess, kind of described as adding a brighter tone and some more humor, and then it also cut the runtime down, cut it down to 2 hours, which is kind of crazy to cut it down to that. But what they're doing is they're gonna go and release the Snyder Cut, so a darker take. They're gonna initially release it as 4-hour long episodes, and then you can watch it as a movie. So kind of like that. What's it called? That Hateful Eight.
It's like a mini series.
Yeah. So they're gonna do it that way. I'm definitely gonna watch it. I love Batman. I have had zero interest in the DC extended universe, especially compared to how much I fucking love the MCU. So I'm gonna watch it. It's kind of crazy that this like internet thing got picked up by HBO Max, and they're gonna put it out. I don't know like the legality of how that's possible, but the trailer looks cool. It's got I can't remember what song it is, but it's got some kind of cool cover over it. And it should be pretty cool. I didn't watch Justice League, or I watched it briefly. Wonder Woman was kind of cool, but some of the other ones are a bit lacking. Like Aquaman was a bit lacking, so we'll see.
I have no real input except I'm not super excited about it.
Yeah, 4
I don't
hours
really
of Zack
trust-
Snyder's work. I don't need
I don't
that.
know, man.
I feel
Like,
bad
Zack
for the
Snyder,
guy,
like, hasn't
but
done anything. Yeah.
What
He hasn't done anything where I'm like, yeah, man, I just implicitly trust that he's going to do something.
300, great movie. Sin City, great movie.
Since he wasn't that good.
he didn't do Sin City. That was Robert Rodriguez.
Oh, you're right. He did.
And it was a fantastic movie, Wes. You're dead
Still
wrong.
not that good, but okay.
300
Alright.
was fun to watch as a teenager. I don't think I'm
300
gonna watch that
made
as an
my
adult.
life as a teenager. You're right.
Yeah,
So
it's
maybe the take is that the internet has gotten away from itself with Zack Snyder, and it's just like, well,
No,
this
I
is
don't think it's
kinda-
that. I just think that he has like people who are like there are brands and things that I am loyal to that I'd be invested in. This is not one of those things. Like,
Yeah.
but clearly there are Justice League fans and Zack Snyder fans who feel very strongly, and I hope that for them this is whatever they want it to be. Like, they might-
Spoilers, it won't be.
hey, but for them it might. Like, yo, if
Yeah.
you gave me an extra 3 hours of Revenge of the Sith in any capacity, I'd watch it.
Ooh,
I don't care what you gotta say.
I can only get so erect.
So, you know, they got some people who feel that, but they got people who feel that way about Justice League, who are just like diehard fans who say, F it, I'm just going to enjoy it because I love these characters. And, you know, I hope that that's,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
hope
if
that they
there's
get
one thing
something
we've
out of
learned,
that.
Vonnie, in this podcast, though, it's that like the internet and the internet fans are always really happy about like something they really care about and how it gets released by the person who actually makes it. They're always so thrilled about how it turns out.
Yeah, so
/S. All right.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I did not kill them. I was like, yeah.
All right, so then the last thing, and we can kind of just dive into this. So a few weeks ago, and we're a bit behind here, but a few weeks ago, the sequel series to The Last Airbender, The Legend of Korra, came out. I think in quarantine, The Last Airbender got like one of those shows that people just really realized how great it is. Like my friend Michaela, who I don't think she's watched really any anime, like really loved The Airbender. So I hadn't seen Korra. I know, Savon, you'd seen it a while ago. Brian, you watched all of it. I had not seen it. I'd
never seen it.
Wesley had never seen it. So I guess I don't want to talk, and we talked about this a bit before we started. I don't want to talk too much about like where the show goes and things like that, but I think as I'm watching the beginning, like it's hard to not compare it to The Last Airbender. And even as I'm doing that, it just makes the show like that much more impressive. And I really, in the beginning, I was like kind of confused with what they were going. It's a completely different direction, but I really love it. So I don't know what y'all's, and if you remember what it was like in the beginning, or just kind of like the world they created with that show. I don't know what y'all's thoughts are, kind of with how it compares to the other show.
So I gotta say, when I first watched Legend of Korra, like several years ago or whatever it was, I had never seen The Last Airbender.
Really?
Right? So Legend of Korra was my entry into that whole universe.
Okay.
And I devoured it then, and then rewatching it since it came out on Netflix, man, and having watched The Last Airbender in between, like Legend of Korra is like that much more incredible in my eyes. And you know, because it's the maturation of that universe.
Yeah.
Was there anything specific that you felt like, oh, like you were just like either impressed by or really enjoyed, maybe more in Korra?
So when I first watched Korra, I was never into the pro bending league storyline or like that kind of like subplot. I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, why do I give a shit about this? But having watched The Last Airbender and then revisiting it, like the fact that they created this whole other subset, which is an anime genre by itself, you know, like the team sports genre in anime, like the fact that they created that out of nothing, out of like the whole concept of out of bending, and like put it in the show, and then also use it as a way to kind of introduce you to where bending has gone in the Avatar universe. I actually thought it was really clever, and was like it was a better way to like make somebody like Korra likable, because in a way she's a very unlikable character, and that's how they wrote her. So but
here we see her struggle.
Yeah, we see her struggle
and succeed, right?
And also she fangirls, which is like kind of nice, and she struggles, she succeeds.
She has to show teamwork.
Right.
Yeah.
She's got to learn a lot of things. It introduces us to these other characters. It's a really cool device.
It's interesting to me
around.
You didn't like it, because the note I had is like, it seems like a legit cool sport, and I would pay a lot of money for a pro bending video game. But it's also
totally.
It's like the zones and shit, and like
I have
the
a PDF
rules.
of the rule set.
Really? And as a Saints fan, I really identified with them getting cheated at the end there. So
I wonder if it happened 2 years in a row.
But it's also like outside of like I think that was such a great thing to do in the beginning, because it's not just great character moments, it's also really cool world building, kind of how you were saying, like not just where bending's gone, but kind of like the world as a whole. And it's like in the beginning, like once they hit that jazz in the beginning of the show and like the big band kind of stuff, is like, okay, that's the direction we're going in, and I thought that was cool. And then like the 1920s like announcer voice, like just really like cements like the new world they're in. And I think like that is such a good supplement to the rest of the show, because it's such a unique world. And I think like their decision to not focus on the original gang, not even focus on their children, like their children are now getting phased out. So it's just like 2 generations later. I thought that was really ambitious, and it's something they pulled off really well. And they have a lot of small moments that like pay homage to the older characters and like things that aren't really like spoon fed, like the blood bending in the beginning and like all the shit Toph did and all that kind of stuff. So, and then Katara is also in the very beginning. I don't know if she comes back later, but
spoilers, baby.
Just like that moment was such a like passing of the torch kind of, and they did it so early, and I just think that's like an ambitious thing to do, to just like essentially like throw away this really like phenomenal show that people love and just take it in a completely new direction.
Yeah, I want to comment a little on what Brian said, because dude, I didn't know that you had watched Korra then Airbender, because that will completely skew my like interpretations of the shows, because like, if anyone who's watched Airbender knows, like, dude, different, like, societies of bending, they are very much distinct, separate societies. So all of the cultural intermingling, that is not a norm. So it's wild to me that your introduction to the series is that all the benders already just coexist, and this is such a normalized thing. When if you watch Airbender, that is like, the seasons are literally in entire societies where you don't even see other styles of bending. And so I felt similar that, like, I don't think I would have liked the pro bending either, because my appreciation for the pro bending watching it was because I got to see, oh, look at this New York City style place that did not even remotely exist in the previous series. And like to the previous, like to your point, the world really gets beautifully fleshed out and built. But I think and mature, but I think my favorite decision was them going full Industrial Revolution. They didn't have to do that. It was an ambitious decision, to Mike's point, but they really, and at first I wasn't a fan, but the season did a good job of establishing how this industrial revolution and technology gap can like shift the status quo, which is everything involving the Equalists and the chi blockers and them just straight up having technology just hard up, right? Like,
oh yeah,
like that was, I don't know how I would like that if that was my introduction to the series, but it blows my mind. Like, I don't need, like, metal bending, like, the build up to metal bending and airbender is amazing, because it's like it's like no one knows how to do it, and it slowly gets hinted at. But for you to see episode 1 with Chief Beifong and not even know the backstory of how you got to that point, you know, I could see it shaping seriously how you see the series. But
yeah,
I just love them going all in on Korra being the polar opposite of Aang. I thought that was a great decision. Some people don't like Korra. I didn't like Aang, but their reasons are such a fun contrast, right? I thought Aang was a weenie. But it's in character because he's a monk and that's his culture, and like it makes sense. I'm okay with it as a character. And Korra is cool because she's a badass. She's about throwing hands and asking questions later, but her spiritual game is weak. And that was really fun of them just to say, like, they were very intentional about, like, and I tell people this, don't compare the two. They're different. Avatar is a story with a set beginning, end. Like, hey, you know who the main villain is from episode 1 of Avatar and how this shit got to end. Korra is just not that. Don't compare them. It's
well, that was making me think that Korra maybe should have been a firebender, like as her base element.
Yeah.
Just because of how like hot-headed she is. And they show her using firebending a lot, right, in the first few episodes.
Yeah.
So that kind of, I wonder if like why they chose to go with waterbending for her, but
no, it makes sense
the
because the cycle, yeah.
Yeah, but like they didn't have to, right? They could have just done it like another generation later, right? Like it would have the same story.
Well, then you would have had to do a whole nother Avatar.
No, I think Wesley has a fair point. I think the show does a solid job though of establishing that like cultures have different philosophies on bending, but your personality still matters as much as well, right? Like when Katara meets Hama, that waterbender, or even when you see like what is it, Tarlok? Like when he's doing this thing, he's like an antagonist, but his style of bending and how he does it is very like mean and like aggressive and like. So I think some of that is like you try to establish like just because your culture has this maybe like style or mindset attached to it, that doesn't necessarily mean you as the individual is that way. So yes, Korra comes from like the peaceful healing culture, but her personality is still this, which is why she still struggles so much with airbending. I thought that was I appreciate that touch, and I don't want to like spoil later seasons, but I think they do a good job of establishing that down the line too, of like characters breaking the mold of what you would expect from a certain type of bender.
Oh yeah. And I think
Persuaded me.
like the entire universe is predicated on this idea of balance and harmony. And so if Aang is too far to one side, then to me it made sense that the next Avatar is going to go the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And like, you know, and still adhering to the cycle of different elements that or culture that they come from. So I think like on so many levels, that's what makes Korra so fascinating, is that like it just works in terms of how the world is built. It works in terms of like telling a new kind of story. It works in terms of like character development. And it's fantastic for it.
But my grievance is, I'm going to cut you off here, Brian, because I really need to share this because I haven't said it with anybody.
Do it.
So like the big thing that the Equalists have is these gloves that shock people.
Yeah.
The verb they use is electrocute, which means to die, like execute is to be killed from electricity. I don't think they're killing all these people. I'm like, who is your editor? Like, this is just basic grammar here. Like, what is happening?
Can't you get electrocuted by like putting a fork in the socket?
No, but electrocute is if you die from the shock.
Yeah.
So what is it? What is it if you don't die?
I don't know, you get shocked.
Shocked?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, shock doesn't...
But shock is also like...
Like, if someone says, like, if I say, oh, I got shocked, like, oh, you all right? Yeah,
that would be a great ability to have.
No one's concerned about a person who got shocked. Everyone's concerned about someone who got electrocuted. And I don't know the middle ground word.
All right.
Colloquialism, Mike. Did you think people died when they first got shocked in the arena? Did you think that Tenzin was dead?
I don't know. Like, I heard actually, so now I'm the asshole because I should have looked up the definition before I fucking went recording and being a dick. But it says,
I feel like you can get electrocuted.
It says to injure or kill someone by electric shock.
Right.
But I remember reading on Reddit somewhere that electrocute means to die. So once again, the internet has betrayed.
All right. Well, we solved that grievance.
Well,
Brian,
I won't look up definitions on
timing?
Reddit anymore. I could do
Our
like
dictionary.
5 more minutes.
Okay. I have one thing to say, I think, that's maybe useful for this conversation. The rest of it, I feel like I just enjoyed the show and, you know, I'm just kind of a dumbass about it. I'm just like, oh, this is cool. Like, awesome. I think one is that I don't necessarily love the love triangles situation or love rectangle that's going on, but I do think that leads into like the whole show in general is a much more mature show, right? They're taking on these like really like sociological questions and psychological questions that I think Avatar didn't necessarily take on. And I don't know, I mean, obviously it's intentional. So like, I wonder if the show creators thought like, actually some of our Airbender watchers are going to be older now. And so they can like take on like bigger ideas or deeper ideas, or whether they were just like, actually, we just want to create a show that's at a different target audience now. But I've just enjoyed that aspect of it, that like, it's not just the firebenders are bad and taking over the world and we must stop them, right? Like a Star Wars situation, but it's actually more like the airbenders, or not the airbenders, the benders in general aren't necessarily like blameless in this society, right? Like the equalists are tapping into the populist.
Yeah.
Right.
There's merit to their argument.
Yeah, right. They're tapping into this idea that like, hey, we're second-class citizens in this world, and like that wasn't the case in Avatar, right? Like everybody who's a bender was noble for the most part in Airbender, or in the one with Aang, except the firebenders. But like, yeah, it just isn't that, right? Like it's not these like big conglomerates of armies coming at it. It's like actually this machine is set up in a way that's like unfair for certain people, and like the fact that Amon is able to tap into that is something that like now resonates obviously with like Trump and Sanders, right? Like those kinds of things are now are very apparent in our society. And so like I just thought that was cool, that there's a lot of connections here between like, you know, George Orwell and our society now, and all of these things that are going on that they're putting into like an animated show that's like theoretically for kids who are like 12, right? Like aimed at them at least. So that was cool.
No, Korra gets really dark down the line. Like, I don't know if Wesley, you said you finished this season?
I finished season 1, so
yeah. So you saw the finale.
Well, I won't spoil it.
Yeah, I won't spoil it. But like, you saw the finale, so you see what I'm hinting at. And like, as you watch it down the line, it gets dark. And in terms of just like, oh, they really went there. Like, they're not pulling punches with some of the moments, and like it drives that point home. But Wesley, particularly the part about like the populace and all of that stuff really made the Equalist storyline really aged well, in my opinion, with the current state. Because when I tell you, when I was watching the episode when the metal bender police were rounding up the non-benders in the night, like that shit really had me like feeling some kind of way. I was like, yo, like I love Chief Bayfong as this character, but also like, yo, your people really rounding up innocent citizens and whatnot.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm not gonna pretend like that didn't feel very, very relevant to what's happening right now, and you have to decide like, you know, police relations, but then Bayfong is a good person, but what does that say about this system? And like it makes you like it, like I said, especially with what's going on right now, like it hits home and makes you have to reflect a little bit. And I don't think a lot of shows age well to where that stuff, you know, it resonates.
So Batman and metal benders.
They got issues.
And Spider-Man.
They need some better training or something. I think Legend of Korra, it's a lot like other anime. It's not true of like American cartoons, but I think other anime do this where, you know, they'll have Dragon Ball, which is more like the kid-friendly version, and then they'll go to Dragon Ball Z, which takes it to another level. Naruto Shippuden.
I was today years old when I learned that Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z are different.
Series.
But yeah.
Goku's a kid. Nah, Goku's a kid, bro. They doing flying on staffs and doing all this little chill shit.
I mean, and
I had no idea.
Harry
Dragon
Potter,
Ball Z is
Harry
like,
Potter
we're gonna
universe
kill
does
Goku
it.
6 times.
Full Metal. What is it? Full Metal
Alchemist. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they do that too, right?
It's dark.
I think the thing with Airbender and Legend of Korra is that like Airbender, I think it still does go pretty deep. Like it still does like hit you in a profound way. Like, you know, the way they talk about interpersonal dynamics and emotions. I thought all of that is like phenomenal for little kids to dive into. And then Korra is like taking those ideas, but expanding it to the outside world, like the society that you apply those, you know, that emotional IQ within, and how society makes that, or how society challenges those ideas. And I think you're absolutely right. It, you know, it matures with the audience, and just wait till you get to the later seasons, especially season 3. I mean, the way that they force Korra to confront all of these big political issues, I mean, I think that's just something unheard of in American cartoons and animation. Like, and makes it must watch television, particularly in 2020 America.
All right, good job, boys. Yeah. All right.
Not a lot of chaotic evil. Like, Korra does not have just a bunch of chaotic evil villains compared to, you know, the Fire Lord, who's just a dick.
And on that
to his son.
And on that note, confidently wrong, episode 8 forever.
It's in the bag.
It was nice to be here.
Was that our best episode?
I think that was. All right. Well,
what's up?
All right. Good job, boys.
This was fun. Glad y'all had me on.
Yeah. Well, we'll
thanks
have you
for joining
again.
us. Absolutely, we need to do it again.
We'll do it again. Do the boys.
I think
Let's
now
watch
we need
the boys.
I think we can put this one out and try and I don't know what, put it on Reddit, I guess.
Well, people listening, you know what to do. Drop us a 5-star review. All of that stuff in the Apple Store, even though we're not actually there. But, you know, one day we will be, and then you'll drop us those reviews. I don't know. We got a nice little foursome here, guys. I like
They
that.
already know.